On Christmas morning, my son-in-law struck my only daughter directly across her face in the center of their living room. His older brother sat nearby in a leather armchair, casually sipping expensive scotch, letting out a cruel chuckle as he remarked, "Finally, somebody had to teach her how to shut up." Every fierce, primal impulse in my 70-year-old body roared for immediate retribution. I wanted to lunge across the hardwood floor and tear those men apart with my bare hands. But I did not scream. I did not hurl insults. I did not give them the chaotic scene they expected. Instead, I stepped calmly between them, retrieved my phone from my jacket pocket, and dialed a confidential number I had not called in over 15 years. Neither of those men had the slightest idea of the sheer destruction I had just unleashed upon their world. 20 minutes later, the front doorbell echoed through the mansion, and the multi-million-dollar financial empire my son-in-law had built using my capital was systematically burned to absolute ground zero. But to truly comprehend why it was not the local police waiting on the other side of that heavy oak door, I must take you back 4 months, back to the sweltering afternoon I first realized I had unknowingly familiarized. My name is William Stanton, though most folks in Chicago simply call me Bill. I am 70 years old, and I spent 4 decades building a commercial transportation and logistics enterprise from a single batter delivery van into a massive regional freight network. You do not navigate 40 years of ruthless corporate rivalries, tough labor negotiations, and high-stakes deals without developing an instinct for reading human character. I can spot a dishonest negotiation in seconds, and I certainly know how a predator behaves when he thinks nobody is watching. Yet, when it came to my daughter, Natalie, my natural defenses softened. I wanted nothing more than to ensure her comfort, joy, and permanent security. So when she married Derek Thorne, a polished, quick-tongued founder of a boutique investment management company, I stepped up to grant them a head start. I provided a $2 million financial gift to help them acquire their dream residence in an affluent suburb. I believed I was laying the bedrock for a future. I had no idea I was funding her gilded prison. It all began on Labor Day weekend. The Chicago heat was suffocating that afternoon, pushing 90 degrees with a dense humidity that hung heavy in the air. Derek was hosting a grand end-of-summer gathering at his $5 million property. The manicured grounds were crowded with wealthy venture capitalists, catered gourmet stations, and endless bottles of vintage champagne. To anyone looking in, it was the picture of elite success. I stood near the edge of the stone patio, holding a simple glass of iced tea, quietly observing the crowd. That was when my attention shifted to Natalie. She was standing near the outdoor kitchen counter, positioned away from the primary cluster of guests. Despite the scorching heat, she was wearing a long-sleeved, high-necked silk blouse. It struck me as bizarre. Every other woman in attendance was dressed in light sundresses, dabbing sweat from their foreheads. Yet my daughter was completely covered from collarbone to wrist. Natalie had always appreciated fine style, but she was never impractical. I decided to walk over and greet her. Derek stood beside her, holding a bottle of reserve red wine and laughing loudly at a joke made by one of his business partners. He looked entirely in his element, soaking in the admiration of everyone present. As I approached, Derek suddenly reached across Natalie's torso to grab a fresh crystal glass resting on the rack right behind her. It was a swift, sudden motion, nothing inherently aggressive, just a fast reach. What occurred in the next fraction of a second is seared into my mind forever. Natalie violently flinched. She recoiled backward, raising her right shoulder in a defensive posture toward her head, her eyes wide with raw, instinctual panic. She braced her entire frame as though she were about to absorb a heavy blow. It was the subconscious, deeply ingrained reflex of a person who has been repeatedly conditioned to expect physical harm. Derek did not even register her reaction. He simply poured his wine and turned back toward his colleagues, chuckling as if nothing had transpired. But I noticed. I stopped dead in my tracks, cold, heavy weight settling in the pit of my stomach. My daughter had been a state champion gymnast throughout her youth. She used to perform routines on a 4-inch balance beam without a tremor of anxiety. She possessed remarkable poise, and perfect physical confidence. She was never jumpy. She was never easily startled. That flinch was no random twitch. It was pure, conditioned terror. I waited patiently until Derek stepped away to mingle with another circle of investors before stepping aside. I deliberately relaxed my posture and kept my tone gentle, trying hard not to alarm her further. "Are you doing all right, sweetheart? You seem a bit tense today," I inquired softly, watching her expression closely. Natalie turned quickly and forced a laugh, a brittle, hollow sound that never reached her eyes. "Oh, I had a silly slip during my workout session this morning, Dad," she claimed, dabbing her forehead. "I'm just a little sore. You know how clumsy I've been lately. Always misstepping over my own feet." I stared at her in quiet disbelief. Clumsy. The girl who spent 15 years mastering gymnastics was suddenly clumsy. I wanted to take her hands, roll up those long silk sleeves, and demand the absolute truth. But before I could ask another question, Derek reappeared, sliding his arm firmly around her waist and pulling her tight against the side. I observed how her entire frame instantly went rigid. "Are you telling your father about your little mishap, Nat?" Derek asked, his voice drenched in a synthetic, theatrical sweetness. He looked directly at me, flashing a brilliant, pristine smile. "She took a rough tumble at the gym this morning, Bill. I keep reminding her that she needs to be far more careful. In fact, I just arranged a special delivery to cheer her up, a brand new luxury SUV. It arrives next week. Figure a sturdier vehicle will keep my clumsy wife secure on the road." Natalie nodded in rapid agreement, her eyes fixed firmly on the granite countertop, avoiding my gaze. "Yes, he treats me far too well. I am truly spoiled kropka." I looked at the two of them, held my composure, and raised my iced tea in a polite toast, playing the role of the proud, unsuspecting father-in-law. I told them how wonderful that sounded and how generous Derek was. But inside me, warning sirens were blaring. I had spent 40 years dealing with high-stakes negotiators and ruthless operators. I recognized a captive situation when I saw one. I was preparing for war. 2 weeks passed following the humid Labor Day event, but the memory of my daughter flinching away from her husband played on an unending, painful loop in my mind. Sleep eluded me completely. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Natalie raising her arm defensively, bracing for impact. I needed deeper answers. I needed to observe Derek Thorne in his natural corporate element, away from his polished host persona. I decided to pay an unannounced visit to his headquarters downtown. Knowing that showing up empty-handed might arouse suspicion, I visited a fine spirits merchant and selected a bottle of 25-year-old single malt scotch, a suitable courtesy gesture for a father-in-law dropping by to congratulate his son-in-law on his strong financial quarter. Thorne Capital occupied the top floor of an ultra-modern glass tower in downtown Chicago. Stepping off the elevator onto the 40th floor, I was struck by the opulent design. It resembled an extravagant showroom built with other people's money. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic vistas of the skyline, complemented by expensive modern art pieces along immaculate walls. The staff consisted primarily of young, impeccably dressed individuals moving with a tense, frantic energy. They looked less like grounded financial analysts and more like high-pressure salespeople racing to meet difficult quotas. I walked toward the primary reception counter, which was temporarily vacant. Standing there with a box scotch, I waited quietly. That was when my eyes settled on the surface of the desk. Resting open beside a stack of mail was a thick paper dossier bearing the logo of a luxury automotive dealership. It contained the registration and insurance documentation for the new SUV Derek had promised Natalie. Curiosity drove me forward. I spent a lifetime reviewing complex operational contracts and financial ledgers. I stepped closer, adjusted my reading glasses, and scanned the fine print on the open page. I anticipated seeing my daughter listed as the primary title holder or owner. Instead, I discovered a corporate entity. The vehicle was registered exclusively under Thorne Holdings, LLC. My brows furrowed as I followed the lines of text. The setup was immediately familiar. A corporate lease arrangement entirely controlled by a holding company. Natalie possessed zero equity in the vehicle and no legal claim to ownership. Her name appeared merely as an authorized secondary operator. Legally speaking, that lavish gift was not hers at all. It was a company asset that could be reclaimed, liquidated, or repossessed at a moment's notice by the managing officer of the LLC. And the sole managing director printed at the bottom of the form was Derek Thorne. Before I could fully digest the implications, a loud voice echoed across the foyer. "Bill, what a wonderful surprise." I turned smoothly to see Derek stepping out of his corner office, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke suit. His signature smile was firmly in place, though I caught a momentary flicker of annoyance in his eyes when he realized where I was standing. He had seen me looking at the paperwork. Derek walked over, extending a firm handshake. I accepted it, matching his grip while offering a perfectly clueless smile. "Derek," I replied easily, "I hope I'm not intruding." I was finishing lunch nearby with an old associate and thought I would bring this by. I handed him the wooden box containing the scotch. "Just a small token to acknowledge your recent expansion." Derek accepted the package, his eyes lighting up at the high-end liquor. "Bill, you really shouldn't have. This is outstanding. Come inside my office. Let's pour a drink." As he turned to lead the way, he casually flipped the open dossier shut and slid it toward the edge of the counter. I let out a mild, admiring chuckle, maintaining my act. "I couldn't help noticing that vehicle folder on the desk," I remarked casually, finalizing the paperwork for Natalie's new car. Derek didn't miss a beat. He turned back with a polished smile. "Yes, indeed. Delivery is set for Friday. She's going to be thrilled. I noticed it was registered under an LLC," I mentioned casually. "A tax arrangement?" Derek nodded with enthusiasm, leaning in like a man sharing a clever strategy. "Tax efficiency, Bill. You understand how it works in our bracket. My certified accountant strongly advised placing the asset within a holding structure. It insulates Natalie from personal exposure. If anyone ever files a frivolous suit against the firm, her vehicle remains totally protected. Plus, the depreciation write-off is substantial. Just sensible asset management." To an average observer who lacked experience in corporate structures, it would have sounded like a thoughtful explanation from a protective husband. But I was not an amateur. I was a man who built a logistics network from the ground up. You do not hide a personal gift inside a corporate shell to protect your spouse. You do it to retain absolute control. You structure it so that in the event of separation, she walks away with nothing. You do it to keep her financially bound to your permission. Derek was not safeguarding my daughter. He was isolating her. He was constructing a gilded cage where every comfort was tethered directly to his authority. If she ever stepped out of line, he could revoke her transportation, her credit lines, and her access with a single administrative filing. Looking at him in his expensive suit, I felt a grim realization settle over me. The flinch at the summer party was not an isolated moment. It was a symptom of a far deeper structure of control. My daughter was trapped. "That's sharp thinking, Derek," I said, forcing a look of approval. "It's reassuring to know she has a husband looking out for her future." Derek beamed, his pride satisfied. "I do my best, Bill. She means everything to me." We spent 20 minutes discussing market trends over scotch while I played my part, nodding and praising his foresight. But beneath my pleasant demeanor, my suspicions had turned into absolute certainty. Riding the elevator down afterward, the heavy silence weighed on me. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from suppressed fury. I had provided this man with the seed capital that enabled him to project this image of success. I had unknowingly funded the trap set for my own child. The realization was bitter, but the blinders were gone. Derek Thorne thought he was the sharpest operator in the room. He believed he had completely fooled a retired businessman. He had no clue he had just handed me the first thread of his unraveling. I walked out into the cool Chicago air, retrieved my phone, and knew exactly what needed to be done next. Direct confrontation would only cause him to tighten his grip on Natalie. I had to dismantle his foundation quietly, piece by piece, until he had nowhere left to stand. The following Sunday evening, I visited their residence for family dinner to maintain appearances. Pulling up to the estate, the grand property felt less like a home and more like a fortress. Natalie opened the front door looking drained, though she embraced me warmly. Stepping into the living room, I expected to find Derek. Instead, I encountered his older brother, Trent. Trent possessed all of Derek's entitlement without any of his social charm. He held no legitimate expertise, yet he carried himself around Thorn Capital with an inflated title, acting essentially as Derek's personal enforcer. Trent was lounging on a leather sofa, his designer shoes resting carelessly on the glass coffee table. He barely acknowledged my entrance, offering only a brief wave, while keeping his eyes glued to the large television screen. Natalie hovered near the entryway, nervously asking if we desired refreshments. Trent didn't look at her. He simply raised his right hand and snapped his fingers sharply, a piercing sound that cut through the room. "Bring me a fresh scotch, Nat," Trent instructed casually, his tone dripping with disrespect. "And don't keep me waiting." I froze as the room grew heavy. I watched my daughter, a woman who used to debate complex business ideas at my dinner table, bow her head without a word of protest. She quietly turned toward the bar area. Her passive compliance made my blood boil. It wasn't just rudeness. It was a deliberate demonstration of dominance permitted within her own household. I stood up slowly and walked over to the coffee table. Without raising my voice, I firmly shoved Trent's shoes off the glass surface, causing his feet to drop heavily to the floor. Trent startled, glaring up in surprise. "Excuse me?" he snapped. I leaned down, bringing my face close to his, my voice dropping to a low, hard tone. "You will never speak to my daughter in that manner again," I stated deliberately. "You will not snap your fingers at her, and you will show respect in a house provided by my resources. Is that clear?" Trent swallowed hard, his arrogance faltering. Before he could respond, Derek entered from his study, holding 2 glasses of bourbon. Sensing the tension, he instantly deployed his easy charm, letting out a casual laugh. "Easy there, gentlemen. Let's keep things calm. It's just casual banter, Bill. You know how Trent gets during game days." Trent quickly nodded, rubbing his neck. "Yeah, just joking around." "My apologies, Nat." I accepted a glass from Derek, keeping my gaze locked on him. "I'm glad we understand each other, because I don't find disrespect amusing." Derek maintained his smile, but his eyes grew cold. He cast a brief, imperceptible glare toward Natalie, a silent warning of friction to come later. Natalie immediately lowered her gaze, stepping back. She was terrified of him. That evening confirmed that I could not simply demand she leave him immediately. If I forced the issue prematurely, he would manipulate her, isolate her further, and direct his frustration toward her behind closed doors. I had to strip away his security and his leverage before extracting her safely. The following morning, I bypassed my usual routines and drove to the south side of Chicago, meeting Mitchell Carter at an old, quiet diner. Mitchell was not a conventional attorney. He was a crisis specialist and operative. Decades ago, during intense corporate logistics disputes, Mitchell was the man I relied on to solve complex problems. He managed a firm of forensic accountants and private investigators who specialized in analyzing the affairs of powerful figures. Sitting across from him in a booth, I placed a signed blank check on the table. "I need you to investigate Derek Thorne completely," I instructed calmly. "Trace every transaction tied to Thorne Capital. Identify his liabilities, his shell entities, and his hidden accounts. Leave nothing unexamined." Mitchell looked at the check, then up at me. "Derek Thorne, your son-in-law. What did he do to warrant this level of scrutiny?" "He put his hands on my daughter," I answered coldly. "He has isolated her, bound her in corporate structures, and permitted his brother to treat her like a servant. He believes he is invulnerable because he operates with my capital. I want that power removed." Mitchell slipped the check into his pocket. "Give me 72 hours to mobilize the team. We'll start by auditing his public filings and digital infrastructure. But understand this, Bill. If he is mismanaging capital on a large scale, we may uncover severe legal violations. Are you prepared for the fallout?" "That is why I came to you instead of public authorities," I replied. "I must manage the timing. If Natalie is attached to his paperwork, We extract her cleanly before everything collapses. I want Derek brought down, but my daughter must remain protected. Over the next few weeks, I suppress my anger and maintain my routine, attending dinners and conversing pleasantly, while Mitchell's team quietly probed Thorn Capital's digital records. By late November, Mitchell alerted me that Derek's private ledgers were protected behind high-grade digital firewalls that could not be breached remotely without triggering alerts. We required local physical access near his executive office router. Analyzing Derek's personality, I knew his vanity was his greatest vulnerability. He was obsessed with luxury goods and frequently bragged about his collection of rare cigars. Mitchell sourced a high-end, custom Spanish cedar humidor featuring an integrated digital climate control system designed to connect wirelessly to a local network. A technician carefully modified the device, installing a covert network bridge and an audio sensor deep within its internal casing. 2 days later, I scheduled a brief visit to Derek's office, carrying the packaged humidor as a gift to mark his firm's quarterly metrics. Derek welcomed me warmly, eagerly opening the package. His eyes lit up at the craftsmanship. I casually mentioned that the digital climate unit needed to remain plugged in and connected to his private office Wi-Fi to function accurately. Wanting to display the item immediately, Derek set the humidor on the credenza directly behind his desk, less than 3 feet from his private server array, and connected it to the outlet and network. Standing there, I saw the small indicator light glow blue, signaling that the network bridge was online. Derek thanked me profusely, offering scotch, which I politely declined before taking my leave. Stepping into the elevator, the heavy weight of patience began to yield to progress. I returned home, locked my study, and booted up the secure terminal Mitchell had prepared. Plugging in high-grade headphones, I activated the live audio stream. The signal cleared, and I heard the steady pacing of dress shoes on hardwood. Derek was alone in his office, muttering to himself. The polished host persona was gone, replaced by a tense, strained voice. The hunt had officially begun. The audio feed through my headphones captured the heavy, irregular rhythm of footwear pacing across hardwood. A moment later, the distinct sound of a door opening echoed through the line. Footsteps entered, lighter, hesitant. It was Trent. The arrogant posture he maintained in social settings was entirely absent. His voice was laced with obvious anxiety as he questioned Derek about the quarterly account distributions. Trent explained that his administrative clearance had been revoked and that 3 major institutional clients were threatening to withdraw their capital by Friday if their promised yields were not released. I sat motionless in my dark study, my hands resting on the desk, waiting for my son-in-law to offer a structured explanation. Instead, Derek spat out a series of bitter curses, ordering his brother to quiet down. Derek admitted harshly that there were no distribution funds available. He stated plainly that the firm's liquidity was entirely depleted. As he spoke, decrypted financial records provided by Mitchell's team began scrolling down my monitor, matching the audio feed. Trent's voice cracked as he asked how that was possible, reminding Derek they had raised $15 million in new capital just the previous month. Derek's response exposed his complete lack of ethics. He explained coldly that the recent capital had already been funneled to satisfy the yield demands of earlier investors. He admitted there were no legitimate trading portfolios, no proprietary algorithms, and no high-yield bonds. Thorn Capital was not an investment firm. It was a massive, failing Ponzi scheme collapsing under its own weight. Then the conversation took an even darker turn. Trent began to panic, asking Derek how they were going to handle $40 million owed to a private group operating out of Chicago's South Side. My blood ran cold. Having spent decades in commercial transport, I knew precisely who controlled those industrial sectors. They were an aggressive, organized syndicate that utilized private equity fronts to wash capital. Derek had not merely defrauded wealthy individuals. He had taken millions from dangerous figures who did not rely on civil lawsuits to settle debts. Trent warned that the syndicate's representatives had been calling all morning, demanding a full capital audit by the end of the month. He voiced fear that if those men realized their money was gone, the consequences would be lethal. Derek struck his desk forcefully, demanding that Trent get himself under control. He claimed he had an exit strategy plan. He revealed his intention to host an elaborate Christmas party at his estate, specifically targeting a new group of prospective international investors. Derek planned to secure a final round of capital that night, temporarily satisfy the syndicate's immediate demands, and divert the remaining funds into untraceable offshore accounts before disappearing. Removing my headphones, I sat back in the dark. I had initially assumed Derek was simply an arrogant man taking advantage of my family's wealth. The reality was far more dangerous. He was desperate, trapped beneath overwhelming liabilities, and capable of reckless actions. If his Christmas event failed to generate capital, or if his creditors pressed him early, Natalie would be caught in the middle. I called Mitchell immediately, stating we needed to accelerate our preparations. Mitchell agreed, noting his team was tracing the offshore routing paths Derek intended to use. He cautioned that moving too quickly might cause Derek to flee prematurely. I assured Mitchell that Derek's ego would keep him in place until his Christmas event. He truly believed he could pull off one last scheme to save himself. We would use his overconfidence against him, allowing him to plan his event while we positioned the legal and financial mechanisms beneath him. By December, Mitchell provided the unencrypted server logs from Thorn Capital. Among the files was a subfolder containing loan agreements linking the firm to the Southside Syndicate. Reviewing the documents, the terms were predatory, giving the lenders authority to seize all assets associated with the firm's officers in the event of a default. But as I scrolled to the signature line of the master agreement, my heart stopped. The signature on the $40 million liability was not Derek Thorne's, nor was it Trent's. The name signed across every page, accepting personal liability for the mob debt, was my daughter's, Natalie Stin. Derek had forged her signature on every loan agreement, shell entity, and high-risk liability, keeping his own name entirely clean. Natalie had no knowledge of these documents or accounts. Yet legally, she was positioned as the sole owner of a failing criminal enterprise. Derek had constructed a setup where, when the structure collapsed, Natalie would bear the legal and physical consequences while he escaped with the remaining cash. The level of betrayal was staggering. I instructed Mitchell to finalize our preparations. We were no longer simply protecting assets. This was a critical rescue operation. Derek planned to use Christmas night to secure his departure. I resolved to make it the night his entire operation came to a permanent end. By the week of Christmas, our preparations were complete. I had instructed Mitchell to review the original legal structure of the $2 million seed gift I had provided Derek 3 years prior. Buried deep within page 47 of that original agreement was a specific legal compliance clause drafted by my corporate attorneys. It stipulated that upon any verified instance of criminal fraud or gross illegality within Thorn Capital, my capital contribution instantly converted into an overriding corporate lien over all assets controlled by the firm and its principal officer. This clause operated as a complete financial kill switch, allowing us to legally freeze his accounts and assets without waiting for lengthy court proceedings. Simultaneously, Mitchell packaged the decrypted ledgers, the forged signature evidence, and the syndicate loan records into a comprehensive dossier, delivering it anonymously to a senior director within the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Financial Crimes Unit. We coordinated the timing precisely. The federal intervention was scheduled to take place at the conclusion of Derek's Christmas gala. On Christmas evening, I arrived at the mansion dressed in a tuxedo, playing the role of a quiet guest. The estate was filled with music, champagne, and wealthy attendees. I observed Derek moving through the room, charming prospective investors with promises of high returns, entirely unaware that his setup was nearing its end. Natalie sat quietly on a sofa, looking pale and exhausted, while Trent hovered near the bar, drinking scotch and acting entitled. At precisely 11 o'clock, the last of the outside guests departed, leaving only Derek, Trent, Natalie, and myself in the living room. The catering staff had been sent home. Natalie, visibly nervous, reached to clear a few remaining wine glasses from the coffee table. Her hands trembled, and a heavy crystal glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the glass table and spilling red wine across the center of Derek's white Persian rug. The room fell silent. Natalie dropped to her knees, frantically dabbing at the stain with a napkin, stammering apologies. Derek's expression changed instantly. The host persona vanished, replaced by sheer hostility. Stepped forward without a word. He struck Natalie across the face with the back of his hand. The force knocked her to the hardwood floor, where she curled up, weeping softly with a split lip. From his armchair, Trent let out a casual laugh. Finally, Trent remarked callously, somebody had to teach her how to shut up. Every protective instinct surged within me, but I maintained my composure. I walked forward quietly, stepping directly between Derek and my daughter. Derek puffed out his chest, expecting an argument. Instead, I retrieved my phone, dialed Mitchell's secure line, and said a single word, execute. I ended the call and placed the phone back in my pocket. Derek sneered, assuming I had called the local police. Are you calling the cops, old man? He mocked. I know the local department leadership. You think anyone is arresting me in my own home because your clumsy daughter tripped? Trent stood up, adding, you're out of your depth, Bill. Walk out the door and go home. I looked at both of them with complete calm. I didn't call the local police, Derek, I said quietly. And you severely misunderstand your situation. At that exact second, the financial kill switch engaged. Miles away, banking compliance algorithms processed the override lien, instantly freezing every corporate account, personal credit line, and offshore transfer path tied to Derek Thorne. The millions he had arranged to transfer out of the country were locked instantly. His net worth dropped to 0 in seconds. Before Derek could respond to his phone, buzzing repeatedly with emergency banking alerts, heavy vehicles pulled up the driveway. Red and blue lights flashed through the tall windows as federal tactical teams surrounded the property. The front doors were breached firmly, and armed federal agents flooded the grand foyer, shouting clear commands. Derek stood frozen, his face draining of color as his phone displayed total account freezes. Agents moved quickly into the living room, securing Derek and Trent in handcuffs. The lead agent confirmed that federal warrants had been issued for massive financial fraud, wire fraud, and forgery, noting that forensic audits had already established that Natalie's signatures were completely forged. As the agents led a panic, shouting Derek and a pale, silent Trent toward the door, Derek looked back at me in total shock, realizing his entire scheme had been dismantled from within. I didn't say another word to him. I simply knelt on the floor, wrapped my coat around my daughter's shoulders, and helped her stand up. We walked out of that house together, leaving the broken pieces of his fake empire behind, stepping out into the quiet winter night toward a future that was finally safe, secure, and entirely free.